Get ready to uncover groundbreaking ideas, discover the hidden challenges, and explore the untapped potential of marketing in the digital age. This is Fair Play with Arun Kumar, the podcast that takes you on a journey into the impact of data and technology in marketing. Here's Arun.
Thanks for joining me once again for my continuing conversation with Phillip Shoemaker of Identity.com. We've been discussing how a nonprofit is changing the way we verify our identities online. Now, Phillip, I want to shift over to platforms, which is one of my favorite topics. The place I go first is there is a commonality between a lot of these digital platforms. They all have some kind of a claim around user privacy, user controls, and they use that as a reason for not allowing data to be interoperable or move between them. When I talk to people, there's this belief that platforms have the right to set their own business rules, and it's seen more as a business rule rather than as a standard. Now, if privacy is, as claimed by the regulators, a fundamental human right, then it can't be a business decision, right? It has to be either or. Let's talk about your former employer, Apple. They don't have the advertising business that's as big as, let's say, Google, even though it's growing a lot. They're more device-centric. What are your thoughts on Apple's campaigns around privacy and making privacy a big deal? Do you think that is genuine?
That's a tough question. It puts you right in the hot seat. But look, I think it's a controversial answer. I think I would say that there are people within Apple that see this as a genuine movement, right? The folks like Eric Neuenschwander and others like that are working on security and working on privacy concerns. This is what they live and breathe, and they have some of the best people in the world focusing on this. But when it comes to the bottom line, of course, Apple has access to all of our PII, our sales, our download numbers, et cetera, and they know what we do, and they use that. They harvest that data in order to sell us better product. We know that. Sure, they don't have an advertising group anymore, right? They had iAd back in the day. That was a company they bought because they wanted to do it better. But those metrics and those tools that they use, they're still leveraging to create better product. And I'm not sure if I have much of a problem with that. But the long answer to your question is for some people it's very genuine. But look, I think for a majority of the company and the results they're getting financially, they're leveraging this, and it's to them it's a marketing opportunity. Let's focus on continuing to be the underdog, saying that we're fighting for the people and we're doing the right thing with regards to your privacy. I think there's some genuineness and some fakeness there, so it's a bit of both.
This is an explanation that a data engineer gave me. I don't quite understand the details of it yet, but let me pose it to you anyway. So there is this claim that Apple does treat data of users differently than, let's say, data that is treated by other platforms like Google, etc. And the difference seems to be something along the lines of, rather than bringing the data out from devices or browsers or whatever, centralizing it, running your algorithms through it and storing it centrally, that there's more a federated learning approach where the device still stores your data and it's the algorithm that they run it and then they send aggregate data back. And that Apple therefore can justifiably claim that while the device has the individual level data, I don't look at all that data. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah, I would say that is very true. As you stated, I left in 2016. I know what they were doing with the data back then. It was all aggregated. It was anonymized. They were trying to follow GDPR as much as possible because it was when GDPR laws got passed, it was a big ordeal at Apple. We had to go to a lot of classes, some of us, as well as try to figure out what we were doing with the data and the harvesting of data. So Apple spent a lot of time making sure that the data was handled properly, that it was compartmentalized as much as possible, et cetera. So yeah, that I believe for the most part, that is true. But I remember being in meetings where we would get numbers on, look, the most Facebook, for example, the Facebook app, people are spending 38 minutes on it on a daily basis, et cetera. So you can get generalized information on that. I can't say what Arun is doing on his phone, but people in general in this area, in this geolocation, et cetera, are doing with their devices. So they get enough information to be able to make better product. But it's difficult for them to zero in on exactly what Phillip Shoemaker is doing.
So here's a question. Do you think there would be better traction if, let's say, the top 10 companies globally got together and said, okay, there may not be government standards yet. The 5 of us or 6 of us or 10 of us who are the world's largest marketers, let's say. Because if you look at marketing, right, the total budget is north of $1 trillion every year, which is a significant amount of money. And I believe that a large amount of that is still wasted, or at least we don't know what the impact is. And especially when I go cross-platform, I lose all visibility into whether I'm actually reaching the same person or not, all of which ties back to this identity issue. It's actually less about me knowing that I need to know who Phillip Shoemaker is, and it's more about, it's really weird. I can actually go into a real estate database and see what kind of houses you bought and, how much money did you spend on it, and that's publicly available. But if I wanted to show you an ad, I have to get consent that I can actually show a cookie to you. It just blows my mind. But it's more around the idea that if the 5 or 6 companies get together and say, we're going to use decentralized IDs, and we're going to say, between us, let's say we spend about $300 billion in digital media. And we're going to now start saying that we're going to start setting certain standards by which identity is managed. And we will accept certain claims by platforms, but not others. And our final commitment is to the end consumer and not really the intermediary platforms. Because at the end of the day, the brand is bought by the consumer. The brand is not bought by the platform. Would that be something that you would consider pitching to, let's say, the top 5 CEOs in the world to say, create your own decentralized identity network that allows you, in a way, to almost create a common standard that everyone can share and probably act as a blueprint for governments to use? Because someone has to start this somewhere. And if the government is not going to start this at the national level, surely it can be done maybe with 3 or 4 companies.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And that's the way we ultimately make this stuff happen, is by a consortium of companies that are powerful get together to resolve these issues. And there's big issues there, right? Like, as you said, the real estate listings, you can get so much information about a person based on that. You can find out where they live, et cetera. And that's really easy to do. That's a problem, right? That's a problem. Data should be, one way to look at it is, imagine if data was aggregated under an ID. I wouldn't say social security number. Let's say it's a completely different number, but it's a set of numbers and letters that ultimately reference everything I do online. But you can never figure out who this person is, right? All this information, all this PII that you track, it's all sorted under a different area of this individual, and all these companies can reference that ID. And ultimately, so when you onboard, say with Facebook, you use that ID and it says, okay, Facebook wants to know your name, your address, your friends list, et cetera. But that's all stuff you're storing on your own device. You can choose to give them that or not. A standard like that allows all these companies to pick and choose what information they want, but you ultimately have the ability to say, yes, I approve that. No, I don't approve that information. To me, could be really compelling, and something that I think an Apple would be interested in, and perhaps a Google, because Google seems to be embracing the decentralized mentality that a lot of these degens have. And I think, to me, that could be really valuable to do that. And we could do that worldwide. That could be super powerful.
I mean, one of the ideas is if you had that system and then you had one common exchange where you could actually trade in those identifiers with the full permission of consumers who know, for example, that it's just a string of letters or whatever that's being shared. And the crazy thing is that we in marketing have done ourselves a disservice by claiming that we're looking to target individuals, because actually we're looking to target groups of people. That's the weird thing. I actually need groups of people. I don't need single individuals unless I'm selling you something super expensive. So let me go into, what do you think is going to happen in the future? What is your expectation around identity? Because right now, the US doesn't seem to have a federal data law coming anytime soon. In fact, some legislators are like, what's the crying need? Which I found shocking. But there doesn't seem to be an impetus for us. There isn't a political climate for it. And instead, we have multiple state laws, which are going to keep cropping up. And then we have this other monster called AI, which seems to be going at breakneck speed and harvesting and using lots of data that we don't even know what exists out there. In such an environment, do you think that we're anywhere close to an inflection point where society or people and governments are going to say, we have to do something about identity and we cannot have that as fragmented as it is today?
As somebody running an identity company, I wish it was right around the corner. I feel it's still many years out, sadly. But I think there's certain things that can help drive this. And I think you touched upon a few things. The direction I want to go and kind of embraces these Web3 ideals is that when a company wants certain PII from me, and maybe it's not my name, my birth date, all that more sensitive PII, but what kind of music I like to listen to, what kind of food I like to eat, etc. If they pay me for it, if they say, hey, we want to get access to all of your hobbies, we want to get access to your favorite restaurants, the information that you could probably mine the data and figure out where I'm eating out all the time, etc. If that was all stored in a central repository or decentralized repository at that, when I say centralized, I mean on my device, not in a centralized database, then I'd be willing to cough up some more information about me. I get into debates with friends all the time, and I have two friends, two coworkers, that we talk about this whole concept of targeted advertising versus just straight up advertising that's not doing any targeting. And I got one friend that says, look, I just don't like advertising. I don't want anything that knows anything about me. I don't want targeted ads. And my other friend says, are you crazy? That's the way I learn about so many interesting things is they know me. They want to target information to me. So therefore, I want targeted advertising. And so I think that's the way the world works. You got a handful of people that hate it. And you got a handful of people that love it and think it's super powerful. And so why don't you embrace both of those, store all this data somewhere on your device, somewhere that I have control of, and ultimately I can relinquish it to vendors if I want to and give them that information, and they pay me something. I get 99 cents for giving all this information away, and they can't sell it. They're certain. Now, of course, they could black market sell it. They sell it behind the scenes. But if you get into an agreement with these companies that say, if you're going to use this information, you need this, store it, you need this, secure it, et cetera, and you can't sell it. To me, those are the interesting kind of moves that could happen. I have this idea of when you walk into a Las Vegas casino right now, and you're on one of their preferred lists or their guest cards, et cetera, they usually have a photo of you. And within 5 minutes of you walking through the door, they know you're there. Now, would it be better if instead of them then marketing to me and saying, hey, come buy slots and get $5 on slots, instead of them just being able to do that willy-nilly, there should be regulations that say, hey, you need to notify that person that you've recorded them coming in, and do you want to have marketing information or marketing information sent to you? And if so, maybe they pay me for it, right? I get a notification that says, hey, Phillip, we see you just entered the win. Do you want $5 in slots if we can check you in here? To me, that would be okay. Start paying me for the data that you've been using about me for so long, right? We are the product, clearly, but this whole concept of us being the product needs to go away. We need to own our data. We need to control it. And as soon as we start giving people the tools to do that, I think people will embrace it more.
Okay. So now if you thought you were in the hot seat earlier, I'm going to put you in the real hot seat now, which is your favorite Steve Jobs moment, if you had one.
Well, Steve was really brilliant guy. And, the thing that we were all taught, that you were taught when Steve was around, when you joined Apple, was two things, is that you're no rock star. We have one and only one rock star at this company, so keep your mouth shut, right? Steve is the guy. The other thing you learn is you had to have an elevator pitch, just in case you ended up in an elevator with Steve, which happened to so many people I know, and he asked, what do you do? And if you can't define what you did well enough before you got out of the elevator, you might go back to your desk and have a call from your boss saying, we need to meet, and you get fired, right? Because if you can't explain to the CEO of your company what you do, it's a problem, right? Clearly, you're not good enough to be there, et cetera. So there's a lot of fear right? That was one of the things that there was always a lot of fear working at Apple, because Apple always let you know that, hey, if you don't like this job, I got 100 people waiting in line to take this. So that was always this undercurrent of fear. But, one of my favorite stories was I was at the company for 3 weeks, and I drove into the office one morning, and there was a team of people picketing outside of Infinite Loop, which is where we were at the time. And I scratched my head. I was literally 3 weeks on the job. And it turned out my team approved an app that was about shaking a baby, and that got the shaken baby syndrome folks in an uproar, rightly so. It was a really dumb, innocuous app, or it seemed to the team, but it made light of people shaking babies. And so that was a big problem. I sit down at my desk, and a few minutes later, I look, the phone rings, and it says Office of Steve Jobs. And I just knew that was going to be a problem. And I picked it up. It was admin. She said, "Hey, Phillip, Steve wants to talk to you." Steve just said a few words, and he said, "You're stupid and you hire stupid people," and he hung up the phone. Now, of course, I don't feel I'm stupid, but I got his point. His point, Steve didn't have a lot of tact at times, whereas other times amazing. But in this case, he just wanted me to know the message is like, look, get your shit together. This affected our bottom line. This affected the share price of the company. It's the first time an app had done that. And he just made his point and walked away. He never talked about it again. We never had another conversation about that. Even when a year later, when we were working on guidelines together, where I spent a lot of time with him, he never brought that up again, because it was water under the bridge at that time. Get your shit together, move forward, and be done with it. That was, I think, one of my favorite Steve Jobs story, although it was terrible at the time. Following on that, I got a call from Al Gore, who was on the board as well. And that was my day. It was just like, oh man, these guys are going to keep calling me. How many bosses do I have?
Wow. There are a lot of moments, obviously, that people have spoken about, Steve, but I think that one is it's just so brilliant because of its brevity. It is so precise. Though I don't know how you kept calm then, because I would have just hit the roof out of stress.
Oh, there was a lot of stress. I ran straight into the VP's office and said, am I out of here? What's going on? And that led to a larger investigation. We investigated how this app got through, and I changed processes along the way to make sure this didn't happen again. And I was told right then and there, it's like, you need to fire 2 people, which I was able not to have to do. I fought hard about that. And moving forward, I realized that these reviewers, who were not as well paid as myself, for instance, were on the hot seat for making these decisions. And if I fired 2 people at the beginning of the App Store's history for decisions they made in reviewing apps, who's going to come and want to work here, right? And so I from that point on, I was like, look, buck stops with me. If my team approves apps or rejects apps, then the heat should come to me and nobody below me. It made no sense. Now, I may end up going to talk to people that made bad decisions and having a stern conversation with them, but the bottom line was, I was the person. I was the one person you go to if you have an issue. And that stuck for the U.S. government as well. We angered so many governments early on, the apps that we approved or didn't approve. The UK government, the Australian government, Germany, the Netherlands, Australia, so many different places. And that's why all the death threats and ultimate issues and subpoenas and stuff all went to me. They didn't go to anybody else on the team, because even though I didn't review all the apps, I was in charge of the team that did. And I think that was a real good learning experience. 3 weeks on the job is how to handle the CEO, how to handle the people in the company, but also how to handle the reviewers who put a lot of trust in me.
That was a great lesson in leadership, by the way. So thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you very much, Phillip, for your time. This has been absolutely great. I have to say, I didn't even notice the time once, except now when I'm like, okay, I'm somewhere near the end. But thank you so much for your time. This is really great. And I truly believe that actually the way of pushing this forward might actually lie in the hands of the marketing community, because the platforms all rely on marketing dollars to fuel their growth. I mean, at the end of the day, many of them have become engines for advertising. And so I think that there is probably something in there by which we can, by getting a few interested companies together, who are all trying to make sure that they're able to get through the final consumer without too many intermediaries. We might just be able to affect change. But as somebody who loves identity the way I do, more as a user of it, and also as someone who's unfortunately been one of the people who's built a centralized identity database once in my life, I can totally understand the direction you're going, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I can't believe the time is up already, but I think you're onto something there with regards to the marketing approach for decentralized identity. I need to pick your brain about that. Thank you.
Absolutely, and you're welcome. And that will do it for this episode of Fair Play. If you like the show, please take a moment to subscribe so you'll get notified when I release new episodes. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love it if you left us a review so that other incredible individuals like yourself can learn about the show. And like I always say, this show is about making marketing better because of data and analytics, not creating frustrating experiences for the people we're supposed to serve. I'll see you next time.
This has been Fair Play with Arun Kumar. If you want to uncover the keys to using data wisely and fairly in an ever-changing world, go to arunckumar.com for more insights and resources. Fair Play is a production of Forbes Books.